Hi everyone, and after a very long break, welcome to Who's He at the Movies. And this time, I'm going to be looking at 1981 sci-fi thriller Outland. My connection to Outland goes back to the July of 1981, where as a 10-year-old, I went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. What has this got to do with Outland, you're now undoubtedly asking yourself, but, bear with me. So, when we got to the cinema, we were about 20 minutes late and missed the beginning of the film. But such as it was at the time, you could simply just stay in your seats and wait for the next screening. So that's exactly what we did. All we wanted to see was the first 20 minutes of Raiders and then leave. So when the programme began again and the Pearl and Dean adverts had finished, the trailers for the upcoming films played, which is always my favourite part of going to the cinema. And amongst them was the trailer for Outland. Now, before you start writing letters and saying, what nonsense, Outland was released in May 1981. How would you be possibly watching a trailer in July 1981? Well, that is because the film was released in the USA only in May 1981. This is the time when the UK had to wait months for a film to hit the cinemas. Anyway, as we just seen Nazis' faces melting in the Raiders film, the last thing we expected to see in a film trailer was a man's head about to explode in his space helmet. Don't believe me? Well, just look for the trailer on YouTube. Anyway, as that imagery was now burnt into my eyes for weeks, and as a 10-year-old, films like Outland were very much the cut of my jib. Dark, moody, scary, and well, it ticked all my boxes. However, it was decades later when I actually saw Outland for the first time on the television. And while I certainly enjoyed it, I was, somewhat disappointed. But before I get onto that, what is the film actually about? Well, simply put, Sean Connery plays Marshal William O'Neill, who was assigned to a mining facility on Jupiter's moon Io. After a spate of suspected suicides amongst the miners in the facility, O'Neill begins an investigation which uncovers a drug distribution ring, which is run by the facility's manager, Shepard. The drugs make the miners work harder, which increases the company profits, but the drug's side effects cause the miners to have hallucinations with fatal results. With the drugs ring uncovered, Shepard hires assassins to kill O'Neill. With time running out and no one willing to assist him, the Marshal makes a lone stand to end the corruption. Does this sound vaguely familiar to you? The story, written by the film's director Peter Hyams, is remarkably similar to the Gary Cooper classic western High Noon, and that's by design. Hyams wanted to do a western, but as westerns were pretty much out of favour in Hollywood in the 1980s and sci-fi movies were very much in, Hyams just merged the two genres. And then Sean Connery on board and wanting to do the film, it was given the green light. Now, while the story is familiar, so are the sets and costumes. This is a film that wears its influences very much on its sleeve, with it also being influenced by the set and costume design of Alien, which was released 2 years prior. Everything is dank, lived in and filthy. This is no bright utopian society. It is grimy, sweaty, and not somewhere you really want to be. Even the film's soundtrack sounds like it belongs in Alien, and that's because both films have the same composer, Jerry Goldsmith. Hyams had previously worked with Goldsmith on Capricorn 1, which always seemed to be a staple of the BBC One Monday night movie schedule in the 1980s. So Hyams was obviously sort of tapping into that sound of Alien, which worked so well for that film. Now, another aspect which aligns Outland with Alien was that it was also filmed at Pinewood Studios. So there was a good chance that a lot of the Alien crew worked on Outland, which would help to explain the similarities between the two films. There's also some nice model work on show, and Outland was the first film to use a technique called introvision. This allowed foreground, midground and background components to be combined in the camera. So this enabled the actors to move convincingly around the miniature sets. And for the most part, it is actually quite effective. The performances are also generally good. Sean Connery is, Sean Connery, and to be honest, that's no bad thing. While his character is basically a square-jawed Western hero, he is allowed to show a little bit of vulnerability in the subplot involving his wife Carol, played by British actress Kika Markham. Her character leaves him during the film and she takes their son with her back to Earth. I think Connery did try to flex his acting muscles during his career, particularly in a film called The Offence, which is an extremely powerful and unsettling movie, which sees Connery completely out of his comfort zone, and I do recommend you go and watch it. Unfortunately, in Outland, not much is asked of him as an actor. Neither was Kika Markham, whose role is fairly small, and she isn't really given enough to do with her part, apart from apologising to Connery's character throughout the film. However, Peter Boyle as Shepard is fantastic. Despite not being in the film much, he immediately makes an impression on the character of O'Neill by very subtly threatening him not to interfere in their own facility at a sort of a welcome meeting with all the staff. I've only really known Boyle from Young Frankenstein, which was a comedic role. But here, he is a particularly nasty character who believes himself to be totally untouchable. His smirking visage is smug and annoying, and when you see his will coming apart at the seams, well, I found it extremely satisfying. Another highlight is Frances Sternhagen as Dr. Lazarus, who is Marshall O'Neill's only ally. She plays the characters very sardonic, and she feels very much sorry for herself for being assigned to such a backwater facility. So when O'Neill asks her for help in investigating the cause of death of the miners, Sternhagen provides the character with more than a hint of satisfaction at being asked to do something more than, well, provide tranquilizers to miners. I think her performance is just about the best thing of the film, and I think that her and Connery made a very, very good pairing on screen. Another special mention must go to James B. Sicking as Montone, who is conflicted with his duty as a police officer and also being paid off by Shepard to look the other way. Sicking plays his cliched part fairly well, and I really did want his character to do the right thing and stand up to the corruption and help out O'Neill's character. The viewer hopes that Connery's character will bring him around, and I'll leave you to watch the film to find out if that actually does happen or not. Now, the film was also littered with character actors, some of which you might be known to you. The miner whose head explodes at the beginning of the film is played by John Ratzenberger, better known as Cliff from Cheers. Legendary British actor Stephen Burkoff appears as a crazed miner and goes full on Stephen Burkoff, if I'm honest, given his take on what happens when someone is off their face on drugs. However, while the film is full of good performances and the set design and music makes you think this film is set in the same universe as Alien, the direction by Peter Hyams I felt was a little flat. Hyams directed one of my favourite films, 2010, a film with a very glacial pace, which fits the tone of that particular story. However, while Outland looks and sounds great, I never once felt any sense of tension, particularly at the end of the movie when the assassins arrive on Io to kill O'Neill. For example, remember in High Noon when Gary Cooper's character is constantly watching the clock waiting for the hired guns to ride into town? Well, the tension there builds to a crescendo when they finally arrive. However, in Outland, while Connery's character is alone in standing up to the corruption, just like Cooper's character, and we do see a digital countdown to when the shuttle arrives containing the assassins, the direction doesn't really build that same sense of anticipation, which is a real shame, as this is what the film is really building up to. For me, Hyams' direction does enough to tell the story and really nothing more. It gets the job done, and I suppose you can say that the direction is, it's safe. And to be fair to Hyams, to do a space western in a time when that type of story was not exactly in vogue, it was a gamble, and I think in part it paid off. Despite the shortcomings in the film's directing, I still think Outland is a film worth checking out. It's got Sean Connery, it looks and feels like Alien, and in some of the deaths on screen, it has the slightly grubby feel of an 80s video nasty, when the film stock was slightly grainy and filmmakers tried to up the ante with gory makeup effects. Or you could just watch High Noon and Alien instead. See you next time.